Hello, today we're going to make a gallium nitride dual pulse. A current test. Then there are several different bandwidths. A current probe, this is PEM. Coaxial shunt bandwidth is 400 trillion. Then this one is our fork spiral coil. Bandwidth is 80 trillion. And then this is one of our ring spiral coils. 150 amps of bandwidth is 120 trillion. Then this is the PEM 60 amp 30 trillion. A Rogowski coil. And gallium nitride goes on and off. It's very fast, so let's take a look. Utilize a high bandwidth test and a low bandwidth test. A measure of a difference in this current. Go ahead, this is a single armor test board. This is. And then the fork is at this position we open two 1.6 holes. Then directly use the fork type like this. Plug it in like this fork. When the current comes down like this, it will definitely pass through these two locations, so. Testing in some high power density boards. How to measure the gallium nitride one. If this is the case, it will be more realistic. And we're going to do a trigger now. Well, I see that it has actually been triggered. And then we look at the whole trigger. One effect of a waveform. And we're going to expand on this edge here. You can see this channel 1. It has a very high frequency and oscillation. This diagnostic frequency, in fact, channel 2 and channel 3 actually have both. It's just that its amplitude will be smaller. But channel 4, basically you can't see it. So let's see how often this is diagnosed. Let's measure a cycle from trough to trough. Almost 180 trillion. Because the channel is one of the 400 trillion. Coaxial splitter. So channel 2, channel 3, it is a 120 trillion and it's 80 megabytes. It's a Roche coil. You can see it. Let's turn off channel 4 first, then close the channel as well. You can see that the test is under a different bandwidth. The one that came out, the level of detail is actually different. This means that the channel is still due to insufficient bandwidth. So we can't see this higher frequency oscillation. And here's what we also see. There seems to be a little difference here. In fact, what about this difference? Well, is it because of the different bandwidth? Its upper limit is different. Then its high frequency phase will be a little off, and then it also created it's a superposition of the entire waveform. A position of influence will be different. So that's it. In a test with some high bandwidth, in fact, try to have enough bandwidth. Only if the bandwidth is sufficient, it can guarantee not only the amplitude, also guarantees the phase. Then let's take a look. Because this is already oscillating, this power downtime is no longer read, particularly accurate hour. Take a look at other locations. In fact, you can also see it from this location. You can also see it from this position. There is a whole gear here, but 30 trillion can't be seen at all. You can see there's a shock in this, but 30 trillion can't see it at all. This position actually rises more slowly, so there's not much difference. Let's take a look at this one going down. The descent time is actually the same. This channel has more bandwidth, so it's a little bit more detailed. The bandwidth of channel 2 and channel 3 is relatively close, right? Channel 3 is 120 trillion, so there will be more details than channel 2. Channel 4, it basically can't see any. The high-frequency details. So a switch test on gallium nitride. In the wear test, or switch that cycle loss. What about the test? In fact, a high bandwidth voltage and current probe. It's going to be necessary, because these details not only affect an entire a loss of the system, also affects a stability. Okay, let's change the current one more time. Let's take a look again. Let's reduce the current even more, because the current should be 2 amps and 1 grid. Let me see how many amps it is. The peak current should be at, it's 6 amps, 5 amps, close to 6 amps. Let's reduce the current and take a look. Okay, we are now. Retrigger it. You can see that it was actually just now. Then we reduce the current. It doesn't have this shock either. There is no high-frequency oscillation. It is possible. So the shock just now may be due to the current exceeds a limit value. Really, so sometimes when designing, we need to be able to see the details. We just know the residual parameters of the design. Is the balance qualified, and then you can actually see. In fact, the details here are still relatively consistent. At least these 2 probes. Let's overlap and take a look. Right? It's actually more consistent. Really? And then just because the bandwidth might still be a little different, so there will be a slight difference in amplitude. Let's take a look at these details. Because of the current of gallium nitride, its current, generally not particularly high, maybe only a few amps or a dozen amps. So sometimes the parameters exceed the limit. What are the consequences? You can also see this. 80 trillion and 120 trillion and 400 trillion current probe. The details measured here are still a little different. The higher the bandwidth, the completeness of the detail. In fact, the better. The lower the bandwidth, basically you can't see it. 30 trillion Roche coil is basically blind to these details. And also in terms of descent time. This descent time should be just a few nanoseconds. But let's take a closer look. Take a look again. I can't see this removal time yet. Let's retrigger it. Take a look and see if you can catch one that is more complete. In fact, that's it. We should actually be at this descent time. About 5 nanoseconds. It channels 1 because of its location. It has an oscillation that's more pronounced, so he judged that 90% of the positions were in this position. So there's more bandwidth. So he measured a couple of nanoseconds. Then both channels 2 and 3 are measured. A few nanoseconds. And you can actually see that the higher the bandwidth, faster it falls, and 30 trillion. It measures out to be 10.66 nanoseconds. This is true for a test. Maybe the bandwidth is still a little higher, or there is a certain amount. More true can only say. Okay, that's the end of today's test.